Scott Schilling Speaks. Going to be a fun one because we have a great friend here today. She is an NLP Grandmaster. She is a bank certified trainer. She trains and coaches around the world, multilingual, and a great friend. Brigitta Hoeferle, thanks for joining me here today on Scott Schilling Speaks.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Scott, for having me. And listen, when Scott Schilling speaks, I listen. So I'm excited to be here and be part of your show. Thank you for inviting me, Scott.
Oh, it's an honor. You get to do so many different things. Well, we can go a lot of different ways. Number one, why? But what do you love doing? What makes it so much fun for you?
So let me start with the fun, and then I'll go into the why, because the why is much deeper. I was bullied in school, and that's probably already going into the why. I was bullied in school, and there are people around you, even when you grow up, that are just witty. They're on the spot. They know what to say in any given moment. They're like, they think on their feet. And I was never that person. I was never good in school. I really didn't like school. My mom and dad moved out of the country to then move back into the country of Germany. And, I switched schools a lot, didn't make a whole lot of friends. And at one point when I was 17, I said, I want to break that cycle. And I want to be able to communicate. And I really want to be able to communicate in an authentic and fun way. And that's why I'm in communications. And you're right, I do many things, and they all go back to communication, right? I'm the CEO of the Center of NLP. I train in bank, which fits right into that. I own a Montessori school, again, communication. All of those things have one, I always look for the overarching umbrella, and that's communications. Because if we're not able to communicate, we lost, right? I just told before we started the recording, I told Scott that I had a flat tire this morning, and that I went to the tire place, and some of these guys, like the supervisor there, after I talked to some of the other guys and they were not able to communicate with me, and I wasn't able to break through to them either, I asked to speak to the supervisor. Now the supervisor, his communication level on a totally different level, and we were able to speak, right? So I said, look, why don't you bring me in and I'll do a little bit of a communications training with your guys, because clearly they need it.
Isn't that the great way to find clients is actually use somebody in their services? That's for sure.
Look, it's always solving a problem, right?
Yeah, that's why I think people make it so hard so often. And I'd say it so many times. It's only 4 words: identify problem, provide solution. But the first part is identifying the appropriate problem. People try to jam their solution into a lack of problem so many times that it gets complicated that way too. So as you do all these different things, you said how bank and NLP dovetail in together so well. What makes that work so well together?
So if you look at the neurological levels that NLP is partially built on, and Robert Dilts has put it so beautifully in a triangle. Imagine a triangle, and imagine the triangle being in 6 levels, and 6 equal levels. At the very top of the triangle is our mission and purpose. Under that is our identity, then values and beliefs. Under values and beliefs, capabilities, then behavior, and then environment, right? So at the very bottom is the environment. It's the broadest one of the triangle, but it's also the one that's the easiest to change, right? Often when we go in and help in communications in an organization, they're trying to rearrange the deck chairs on the sinking Titanic, where they're not even plugged into the mission and the purpose, or their identity, or their values and beliefs. And on the values and beliefs, that's where bank comes in, right? Because bank is all about tapping into the values of people. And when we're able to speak on an NLP level to the representational systems, now that's a big word, that's a big NLP word, to how people store information and how they learn, either kinesthetically by feeling, auditory by hearing, visually by seeing, or auditory digitally by um, uh, thinking and processing information internally, right? So I call that, if we look at a V8 engine, that's one part of the V8 engine. And then on the other part is the bank methodology, and that's the values of people. Do they value more planning? Do they value more freedom? Do they value more care? Do they value more knowledge? Now, as humans, Scott, we're all 8, right?
Right.
But we're one dominant of each. So a lot of people have to see something in order to grasp it. Some people love audiobooks, so they're more on the hearing side. Some people, they go in and they got to actually touch the book, not hear the book or not read the book on a Kindle, but actually touch the book, flip the pages, go through it with their entire being. There is no right or wrong. There's just what's our preference. And I find that so fascinating.
Well, I think you said something there that is pretty important for everybody to hear. And that is, there is no right or wrong. We are all part of this 4 and that 4. So we're all part of the 8, and whatever our combination of those are just what they are. Not right, not wrong, not indifferent, just what they are. And so if we can speak to that and through that, it kind of makes sense that we would probably get the communication to land so much better. True?
Yeah, absolutely true. Because if I'm speaking on my dominant code in my rep system, my dominant code in my value system, well, I'm leaving out 3 on both sides. That means I don't have enough choice and flexibility in my communication. That means what I'm trying to say to someone doesn't land with them, because what are the chances that they're exactly my dominant code? Now, you and I have spoken from stage and have sold, thousands, millions of dollars, and we know how to put it in my daughter's words, to flex in and out of those languages and to have that flexibility. The people that are not, people that go to networking or that don't have those lenses on yet, they don't know what they don't know, right? I mean, if we look at the no pie chart, that's the biggest piece of the whole pie, right? Not knowing what we don't know, and therefore they don't even have the knowledge of what they're missing. Now, on the other side, they might go to a potential client or to a networking event, and that person that they're talking to is actually very identical to their code, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that was easy. We immediately hit it off." Right? There's a know, like, and trust immediately established because there's so much similarities. There's so much commonality, and when we have commonality, then it's easy, right?
Yeah, very much so.
Why not learn the full V8?
It makes so much sense to do that and communicate in somebody's preferred way of receiving information, if you can possibly do it. And mastery really comes when you, as you say, gain that ability to flex, to evaluate on the fly the other person's dominant preferred style, and then be able to communicate to it. But that's
sounds simple.
That's trainable, right?
It's very it's a skill that you can learn, and that's why, now going back to my why, that's why I wanted my children, when I was ready to become a mom, I wanted my children to not struggle for the majority of my child or their childhood and adolescent years through school. I wanted them to already have what I learned much later in life.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah, and makes a lot of sense. It would make a lot of sense to teach this a lot earlier, wouldn't it? Or to teach it at all?
Yes, and yes. Yes, and yes.
It would make so much sense. And I think it's interesting. What just flashed in my head there is I can see I don't know, first, second, third grade teacher that is potentially extremely frustrated with a student, basically because they are communicating in one style and the kid just doesn't get that style, just doesn't get that So it could be seen that young, correct?
Yes, and I love that you said that, and I'll tell you what happened. Our kids go well. Amelie is our 19-year-old, and she graduated during the pandemic, which that sucked on a whole different level, I'll tell you. But they're going to an entrepreneurial high school, and my expectations on a private entrepreneurial high school are a little bit higher than even just your normal private school, right?
Sure.
That the teachers would have a little bit more knowledge around entrepreneurship and different learning styles. So it was the physics and math teacher who is a high knowledge, right? High, and here I got my little cards as my V8 engine, right? I got the 4 here and the 4 here. So he's a high knowledge, and he's also a high auditory digital. So that guy is like lives in his head all day long and is trying to teach. He's an engineer, brilliant man, tries to teach children the concepts of physics and math, and is not able to flex any of these. Now, there are children that might be high K and might be high AD, but he's missing out on all the others. And I actually went in and spoke to the director because my daughter's very frustrated with the teacher. Now, she is a high K, but she's frustrated. She's also a high nurturer. She's frustrated for her fellow students, for her fellow classmates, because they don't get it. And that's a real problem, see?
It's interesting. I've never thought about this until this conversation of how much misconnect there is in the educational system, not purposefully.
No.
Like the guy is absolutely brilliant, but he's in his head, and there's 3 other styles he's probably not getting through to.
No. And here I come in and I make them aware of it, and it just goes over their head. And that frustrates me, makes me sad, because I would have come in at no cost and trained their entire staff body, right? So, for the ones that are watching, Scott, that might not know, I came to the US to build a Montessori school. And that's an educational facility for children, right? Children from 3 months, ours goes all the way through middle school. And in my work with children and my staff and coaching parents, which I added as a service, I found children are innocent, Scott. It's the adults around them that screw them up. Yeah. It's the parents,
Makes sense.
The teacher, right? And that's where I went deeper into NLP, where I was like, there's got to be something out there that I can teach my staff, that I can teach the parents, that I can teach other thought leaders to become a better communicator, so they're not passing on their limitations and their stuff onto our children and perpetuate the whole thing. I would use,
like I say,
different words, but I'm not using them right now.
Well, no, but I think that's very, very much true. And I mean, as much as I've been around this work and for the number of years and things like that, I've never had this thought before from the educational side, from the serving our children at a younger age. And I mean, it almost shocks me that I've never thought about this before, because I'm so close to the work in business, but just had never been close to it, on that side. It's actually kind of stunning to me. How do we get the word out that this is a possibility? How do we get more people to work with you?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question right there, Scott. That's the $1 million question right there. Because, there's a lot of work to be done. And that work also takes somewhat of a vulnerability for people to understand, I actually need this.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'll tell you real quick, when I went through, before I even knew about NLP, because I didn't know what I didn't know, I built the school coming from Germany, built the school from bottom up in a small town in Tennessee, onboarded staff. Montessori is its own methodology within the teaching methodology. So I had to have certified teachers in the state of Tennessee that actually have a teaching degree, right? And then on top of that, they had to go through another 3-year diploma to learn all around the Montessori method. And I absorbed that cost. That was about $3,500 cost per teacher that I would onboard. We had 15 teachers. So I would bring in teachers. I would spend time with them. I would pour into them. They were excited. They were on board. And a year in, they would leave. And then the whole process would start again. That means I lost time in finding new teachers. I lost a lot of money, right? And in the beginning, I looked at all these teachers that are leaving and I'm going, well, they're just idiots because they don't know an opportunity. Let them just go. And it happened so many times over that I finally kind of leaned back and had a little, coming to Jesus kind of talk with myself and go, there's one common denominator here.
Yeah.
Right here, right? So Brigitta's doing something that she doesn't know what she's doing. Again, here's a pie chart. We don't know what we don't know. And something's got to give, but where do I even start? Right? So I was vulnerable enough for me to understand, okay, I gotta learn more, but I don't even know where to start. And then as I was going into, just Googling business development and personal development, I came across the foundation of all communication and the Meta program of communication, and that's NLP. And I was really intrigued, and that's how I got into NLP. And thank God I did, because too many people continue to do what they're doing and point fingers outward and go, well, they're all idiots. They're all dummies. They don't get it. Where the work starts with me. And that takes some vulnerability.
I mean, this is really interesting because from my experience, NLP, or where I learned of it and learned some of it, not going to suggest that I know all of it by any stretch of the imagination, is when I chose to go speaking full time, and all of a sudden you started to hear people sharing, well, did you see the NLP here, or did you see it there? And again, like you say, you get to that point where you don't know what you don't know, and you go, no, not really. And then you start to look and you realize how much better, how much more on target the communication can be if you would actually know a little bit of this and utilize it on a consistent basis. Communication would be much better.
Intentional, right?
Yeah.
But then the question is, intentional for whom or for what?
Right.
Because if it's intentional only for one person, now it becomes manipulative. Right? But if it's intentional for you, if it's intentional for me, and if there's the intention to actually do some good in a bigger way, now it's a win-win-win. Now it's an alignment and it's not manipulative, because the difference between inspiration and manipulation is intent, and that's it.
Makes sense. So
right.
I was training a group yesterday, and I shared my heart-centered selling definition of sales as education through communication without manipulation. It's really that of taking that position of the teacher to teach on the features, advantages, and benefits that your products, goods, and services have to offer to provide solutions for their needs, wants, and desires. And the key to my way of presenting and selling is no manipulation ever. There's just not good manipulation. It's just not the thing to do. And so it's interesting to me that I think a lot of times people, unfortunately, assign a bad connotation to NLP.
Right.
When actually there's far more good than there is bad, correct?
That's correct. And imagine, if we go to Home Depot and people would act the same way about a pocket knife or a machete or a hammer. You can build with a hammer. You can destroy with a hammer. It's all about, what is it that you intend to do? Well, if it's demolition day, then a hammer is actually your friend, right? But if it's intentionally used to manipulate and to hurt someone, then yeah, NLP and all other communications methodologies fall into that category. And it's because too many people have been misusing NLP. And I think that's why it's gotten the more negativity, specifically in the US. And that's also why I've locked arms, with our Center of NLP that's been around since 1986. We've locked arms with two organizations abroad, one in Switzerland and one in the UK, to do quality control. Because we do quality control. Nice. Anyone that takes our programs, I vet them personally. And I've asked people to not move on with us, because it was very clear what their intentions were, and I was not going to have any part of it.
That's awesome. And, I love the fact that that it really is about intent, and that you work so hard to get to the bottom of that intent before the training. That's awesome.
Yeah. There's a whole oath around NLP, and we've adapted that oath. It's almost like the oath, what is it called? The Hippocratic oath that a doctor takes.
Right.
Right. And when we have that oath as part of our certification programs and of our coaching, it's like an agreement. I can come back to that and go, hey, are we still in alignment with that oath? Are we still in alignment with that agreement? Or is there something off that we need to just tweak a little bit, right? That allows me to go in and remind people that have taken our courses, which I've never had to do, to, say, hey, let's make this in alignment again. Because again, I'm swimming against the stream here right now with NLP, and I stand very proud and strong in NLP being used for good and being used for good communication and not being used for manipulation.
I love that. Again, it's a huge part of it. Always has been a huge part of my career, is the intent and the purposefulness of the communications and things like that. I was sharing with somebody earlier today, and they said, well, I don't represent anything that I don't use myself. I said, me too. It's not about presenting something to present something. It's about presenting something to serve somebody. And the reason I know that it'll do that, because it served me as well. So. Right.
So there's that serving of them and you and a greater good. But if it's just a serving of one, that's no good. And when I see that, I'm out, right? I go, nope. I like to look in, I don't know about you, Scott, but I like to look in the mirror at the end of the day and go, job well done, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm the only person, I've got to get up every day and look at me and say, are you doing this with the best possible intention? Are you doing this with the best possible process? How are things going? Are you doing this for all the right reasons? Right. I think we're in a time in our society right now. We live in such an immediate gratification, me, now, that if we don't check ourselves on a consistent basis, be really hard to fall. Really easy to fall into some pretty significantly bad habits. No, we don't need any more of those.
No, I agree with you. We need to work on the limitations that we have, and we all have them. I have them. And, coming back to agreements, I have an agreement with my kids and my husband to, hey, if there's something that surfaced, let's talk about it. Let's speak about it without, if we can, and sometimes that's hard because when emotions are high, intelligence is low, without judgment, right?
Yeah.
But at least we have that. And just by me seeing how my children, and of course I'm biased, come on, how my children have grown up, and how they say it. And I got to give you a really quick story. Anna is our 15-year-old. She'll be 16 on Monday. So proud of her. Well, proud of both of my kids. Again, not biased at all. The other day she was telling a story of how she was helping a friend. Oh, because she's really good in math, right? New school year just started. She really gets math. She says, I don't know why I get math. I know why she gets math, because she has done manipulated mathematical figures ever since she was 18 months old at the Montessori School. It's part of her being. It's part of her DNA, although she doesn't even know it. And it doesn't matter. But she was helping her friend, and she was catching herself. She was saying something, can't exactly tell you what she was saying, but she wanted to start the sentence with an if and question her friend. And she caught herself and she reframed it with a when. And later in the conversation, I made her aware of it, because she reframed a few other things for herself as well. She caught herself and then she reframed it in the moment and continued speaking. And I made her aware of it later. And I said, did you realize of what you did? And she's like, what did I do? What did I do? And I told her, I said back the reframes that she used, and she goes, no, that's cool. And then she just went on. She didn't even question it. It's, she's been in the classroom. She's been exposed. She hears Christian and me speaking. She hears us training and teaching and mentoring. It rubs off.
Yeah, no doubt. Absolutely. I share many times, live your life as if you're on camera 100% of the time, because the reality is you probably are. And number two, there's always somebody watching. Somebody's always observing and doing things like that. Hard to believe we burned through all of our time already. How about one last little word of wisdom for everybody?
I was on an interview the other day with the genius Keith Cunningham, and he said something that really stuck with me. And I'm pretty sure we've heard it all before. I know I've heard it before, but this time it really stood out to me. He says, success is getting what you want, and fulfillment is giving what you got. And I want to pass that on, because that really rings true to me.
Absolutely. Keith is a brilliant guy. I actually quoted him in my last book, and he made a statement. We were speaking together in Singapore, and he said, hell on earth is meeting the person I could have been.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's some wisdom there. So how do people get a hold of you to work with you?
Really easy. centerofnlp.com is the website, or send an email, info@nlpatlanta.com, info@nlpatlanta.com. Really simple. Or just Google my first last name and you'll come up to me. There's only one Brigitta Hoeferle, if you can get the spelling right.
and even Google tries to help you with that. I mean, you've got it trained. It tries to bring you up. Brigitta, thank you for being here. Truly appreciate your friendship and everything that you're doing. It's so much fun to work together and do a variety of different things. So I look forward to much more in the future.
I agree. Thank you, Scott, for having me. Bye, everyone. Happy weekend.
Absolutely. Thank you all for joining us here on Scott Schilling Speaks. We'll see you again tomorrow at the exact same time. God bless.